We are going to discuss public speaking. Don't run out of the room. Just stay where you are. Let's get through this. We'll get through this together.
Let's roll the cameras, please, and roll sound.
Hi, I'm Roy Choi, and this video is all about public speaking. The ability to communicate confidently in front of an audience is one of the most important skills you can learn. Not only does it help you in the workplace, but it's something that can help you in your everyday life. Hopefully, over the course of this video, we'll be able to help you with that and giving you a few things to keep in mind next time you're giving a presentation, or leading a meeting, or communicating with an audience. Now, I've worn a lot of hats over the course of my career. I started off waiting tables as a kid, cooking rice for my parents' businesses. I went to culinary school. I started cooking at some of the world's best establishments. I started my own food truck. Then I opened my first restaurant, then another. And now I run a multifaceted business, working with teams of people across a ton of different realms. And I've been able to do things I never expected I could do. It doesn't matter if you're taking an order from a table of two, leading a meeting with a dozen people, giving a lecture in front of thousands, or hosting a TV show with an audience of millions. The skills and techniques you need are, for the most part, exactly the same. We're going to hear from a number of experts. Actors, scientists, scholars, storytellers, even a former president. And we're going to cover some of the key things to keep in mind when it comes to communicating effectively in front of an audience, no matter how big or small. So let's kick it off by asking, what makes a great speech?
What makes a great speech fundamentally is whether it produces action. It's not simply the words that matter. What you're really hoping from a speech is that you're mobilizing people to take some sort of action or to feel different about something. One of the reasons why FDR's first inaugural is considered one of the great speeches in presidential history is because that sheer confidence that he projected to the country.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And it was said that after that single speech, that the country's mood changed. He projected, as Doc Roosevelt, that confidence onto the country. So somehow, when you're able to change actual feelings toward a piece of legislation, or if you're able to change the mood of a country, or you're able to change the tone of sentiment, that's when a speech really works. It's one of those magic things where words and a speech can really change things for people.
Now, you or I may never have to change the mood of a country, but it's still important we know why we're speaking and what we're hoping to achieve. Are you trying to change how people think or feel? Are you trying to teach them something? Are you trying to inspire them, convince them, or entertain them? Knowing why you're speaking is critical to reaching your goals. Once you know why you're speaking, what your message is, next you have to think about who you're speaking to. In other words, know your audience.
So if you're going to tell anybody anything, either an individual, a small group, a large group, doesn't matter. You have to understand your audience. You have to. Otherwise, it's two ships passing in the night. Otherwise, you'll be lecturing and not communicating. I try to make sure I give at least one high school commencement speech in New York City each year. This is for a high school over in Brooklyn. And in this school, it's in a struggling area. The neighborhood is poor. I spoke to the principal, and I sent a series of questions to her. And I said, okay, how many students? How many students qualify for free lunch, which is an indication of the poverty level that they experience? What percentage of students go to college? What percent of students had dropped out? So I'm asking these demographic questions. And the response was, why do you want to know? Why does that have to do with anything? And I was like, whoa. The principal thinks that a commencement speech is this prefabbed thing that shouldn't actually know, care, or have any concern about who the audience is. Her idea was, if you have a message, you should deliver the message. But how I deliver the message is completely influenced by who I'm talking to. If it's mostly girls in the graduating class and they have ambitions, I'm going to tell them there's certain professions where you're going to have to work hard because the men are in control. And so there's a gender demographic that will influence how I deliver a message. If people are poor, I will add some examples of people who overcame not having much resources and say, by the way, in college, there's scholarship money, and I'd say a little more about that. I'm giving this example, of course, in the context of a commencement speech, but it applies to everything if you're trying to communicate.
If you know who you're speaking to, you'll be able to connect with your audience more effectively and get the results you want. Effective communication means knowing your crowd. But you also need to keep them engaged, to be listening. Otherwise, you may as well be talking to yourself. Think about how you're saying, what you're saying, and how you're creating that connection between yourself and the audience.
When I was president, I worked hard to give you more peace and shared prosperity, to give you an America where nobody is invisible or counted out. When it comes to public speaking, making the audience feel that you are speaking directly to them is crucial. So I've always favored, whenever possible, the maximum amount of conversational style, because it's just like you and I are talking now. I've got a fair chance that whether you like me or not, or you agree with my politics or not, or whatever, that if I'm just talking to you, that you'll probably listen. It also shows respect to someone if you're just talking to them. You don't think about it, but if I'm having a conversation with you, I'm saying several things. First of all, I'm interested in talking to you. I'm interested in you hearing me, and I'm interested in your response. You're important. You matter to me. Whereas if I get up and tell you, not since the dawn of time have we ever faced a challenge like this, and you're in a room full of your friends and you can't wait to go out and, walk the streets and have dinner at night, or the last thing you want to do is to be burdened with the end of civilization, there's a good chance that you'll turn me off about 3 minutes into the speech. A lot of people focus only on the literal words of the speech. There's a fair amount of academic research which shows that communications by speakers is only about 20+% the words spoken.
Now, when you're addressing, say, a room full of people, one of the things that I like to do is to make eye contact with different people in the audience, maintaining contact with the text, but when you look up, look specifically, meet eyes with someone.
There's always somebody in the audience that is looking at you and hanging on your every word. You find that person. Don't find the person who's looking down on their phone and you feel like, oh my gosh, they don't even like. Find that person who is looking at you and is engaged, and then speak to that person.
That's a surefire way to make sure they're engaged, because if the audience sees you looking at someone, the thought going on in their mind is, he may be looking at me next, so I want to make sure that I'm able to meet his eyes. So engagement can take place on so many levels, and everybody wants to be seen.
You want your audience to feel like you're talking to them, not lecturing. You want to be conversational. You want to make eye contact. You want to make them feel seen. Create that human connection. Doing it comes down to how you're speaking. And to speak effectively, you need to be thinking about what you're saying. One of the best ways to do it is by telling stories.
When you share a story, when you share an example with people, it reaches to people's hearts. Sometimes when we mention numbers and statistics, oftentimes we don't see humans in that. We don't see how it is impacting individuals. People don't even realize that we are talking about humans, we're talking about families, we're talking about children. When you share a story, you actually bring in that human side to it and people start connecting with it and they understand the emotions and the feelings behind it, why it is important.
If you're going to tell a story, you have to imagine that you are a voice at the time. Your perspective on the story will shape the words you use, the tone of your voice, and what comes first, second, and third often. Decide the story you want to tell. Decide the perspective you want to take. And then I would practice, not the words, because you know the story. I would practice and I would learn to listen and imagine how it would be heard by other people. Do they need to know what I know to hear it right? What do I need to tell them if they don't know what I know to hear it right? And then do your best to hear your words. And then your brain will automatically start telling you how to speak in a way that other people will want to hear it.
Stories can be incredibly effective at making an audience care about your message and connect to what you're saying. You can also do that with humor. You don't need one-liners, but if you make your speech entertaining, then people will be more likely to listen to what you have to say and buy what you're selling.
Humor matters. I think people like smiling. They like laughing even more. If you can get them to do that while they're learning, you've got them. You can use that as an excuse to communicate something that's harder than what you would otherwise attempt, because they're right there with 100% of their attention span. And that's why humor is a fundamental part of how I communicate.
I think our sense of humor is built from every experience we've had in our lives. Everyone has a different sense of humor, so that there is no formula for it. Probably the simplest advice you could get is talk to the audience as if you're telling them something interesting. Because if you're not thinking, this better be the funniest thing ever, I better get a huge laugh, and instead you're thinking, I'm just gonna open up and talk to these people and have an interesting conversation, then they enjoy it regardless of how many laughs you get. The thing that hurts most comedians is what we used to call the wide-eyed panic. If you do a joke and it doesn't work and you look thrown, it's much harder. Because then the next joke, they may not laugh at just because you look so scared. If you carry yourself like you know what you're doing, it will all go better. So you have to have a weird bravado. And it also helps to seem amused by yourself.
Here's where humor can help. People have asked me, did the so-called Bushism, which is a interesting way to describe the malapropism, the misuse of words, was that somewhat contrived to lower expectations about you? And the answer is, no, it just happened. Bushisms give you a chance to kind of poke fun at yourself, which is by far the most effective humor if you're a leader.
So far, we've talked about why you're speaking, who you're speaking to, and how you're conveying the information you want. And we've covered using stories and humor to make sure what you're saying is heard. Another great way to engage and persuade an audience is by asking questions. Because even if you don't actually want anyone in the crowd to answer, you're inviting them to imagine what the answer might be. And now, all of a sudden, they're not just sitting there passively being bombarded with statements and information. They're active and thinking for themselves. So they're much more likely to engage and be persuaded by what you're saying.
I want to go back in time to a moment in U.S. political history. The year is 1980. Jimmy Carter is president of the United States. There are American hostages that have been taken in Iran. There is an energy crisis. Unemployment is high. Inflation is high. Phenomenon economists call stagflation. They hadn't seen it before. Things are looking pretty grim. Jimmy Carter has a challenger that year in the Republican Party. His name is Ronald Reagan. So Ronald Reagan could have said, your economic fortunes have deteriorated. He could have said, stagflation is a stubborn problem that I vow to get rid of. But he didn't do that. What he famously did, one of the most ingenious, persuasive moves in the history of American politics, he didn't make a statement, he asked a question.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
So brilliant, He did it instinctively, but now we know from a whole array of research that this is a very effective persuasive tool. When the facts are very strongly on your side in making an argument, questions are more persuasive than statements. Questions have to elicit a response. They are inherently interactive. They inherently provoke. So if I say to voters, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? The voters, sometimes consciously, sometimes not even perfectly consciously, will say, let's think about this. 1976 was 4 years ago. What was happening in 1976? Okay, we had a bicentennial, there was a lot of disco. Oh, I was much better off 4 years ago than I am today. Wow, my gosh. What are they doing? They are coming up with their own reasons for doing something. When people have their own reasons for doing something, they're more likely to do it.
But of course, whenever you're speaking or communicating with an audience, preparation is key. If you're not prepared, it's probably not going to go well. In fact, it's definitely not going to go well.
Nothing is more important than preparation before communicating. It's everything. If you haven't done your homework, if you don't know what you're talking about, if you haven't absorbed the information, you can't communicate clearly. It's just not possible. So for me, that's the bedrock. If you don't know what you're talking about, you can't talk. And this is one of the liberating things about preparation. If you're prepared, if you're ready, and you get this big moment, and if you're lucky, when it starts, everything flows because you've done the work. Before you give your presentation, try to break it down into the simplest components. It has 3 parts. Tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, and drive that point home.
In the beginning, what I would do is just have bullet points. I would have almost like an index card, and would just make sure that I had the key points that I wanted to hit. I would suggest that you do that too. If you're not comfortable in just getting up there and speaking, try not to write everything verbatim, because then you're memorizing. You're not speaking, you're memorizing.
If you've broken it down into those pieces, I think it takes some of the fear, some of the anxiety out of it. You know what you're trying to say going into it.
People feel exposed. They feel vulnerable. They feel that people will not listen, or they'll laugh at them, or that they can't hold an audience's attention, or they have nothing to say. There's a lot of reasons why people are so fearful of public speaking.
To tell you the truth, I still, for whatever reason, I'm much more nervous when I'm actually talking to real people rather than looking in the camera.
The only way to get over that is by practicing. And don't expect you're going to hit a home run every time, because you're not. Sometimes audiences are bored before you even get there. They've listened to 10 people before you. Sometimes they're eating while you're trying to talk, which is really distracting if you're at a banquet or some kind of a formal dinner. Sometimes they don't laugh at your jokes. I mean, everything that can go wrong has gone wrong with me and most everybody else I've ever known who gives a lot of speeches. But you just have to persevere and keep trying.
Of course, experience helps. The more you do it, the better you'll get. And some people are naturally more confident in front of a crowd than others. So practice. And to help you as you're about to walk out to the sea of faces staring back up at you, I'm going to leave you with some wisdom from someone extremely qualified to speak about owning a room with confidence.
The way to own a room is to walk in with your frequency. Walk in with all of your energy. You are a life force. You are an energetic phenomenon, really. You know, your soul is made of stars. Stars shine. But most people will dim that shine because of, for whatever reason, for a lot of times, really dumb reasons. And we all have those. A lot of people don't want to be illuminated because they are afraid of the attention it brings. They're afraid of the judgment from other people, from other women, other men, maybe because of the religion they grew up in, where vanity is thought of as something bad, for whatever reason. But it is your life's work to shine. something that you can do before you go on stage, before you go into a meeting, before you even leave the house. Know that you are perfect as you are. Something I do is when I go on stage, I imagine I'm going on stage in my mother's living room. And she's watching me, and she loved everything that I did, even though it was terrible. She would laugh. She was probably laughing at how ridiculous I looked, but she loved it. So I play this trick on myself when I go on stage. I say, Rue, act as if this is Mama's living room. And that's all Mama out there. So I go out and I'm like, hey. And it's fine. I'm not nervous. I'm like, I can actually get into the moment and I can find the moments because I don't have all the nervousness that's taking up so much space in my head. Or like, what are they thinking? Well, I'll tell you what they're thinking. Mama loves you. Mama loves you. You can do no wrong. What you're doing is imagining a situation where you are surrounded by unconditional love. Unconditional. And you are able to rise and be the star that you are. Give yourself a break. If you're thinking, oh my goodness, everyone's looking at me. It's like, good. You're fabulous. And yes, I've had times where I'm thinking, oh goodness, yikes. But then I have to sit myself there. Rue, I say, Rue, breathe. You're fine. So the way to bring yourself back to this moment is to simply breathe. That's the greatest tool. Breathe. And then tell yourself, once you've done that, tell yourself, nothing's that serious. Nothing.
I hope this video has been helpful and given you a few things to keep in mind next time you're giving a presentation or leading a meeting or communicating with an audience. If you want to hear more from our instructors, I recommend diving deeper into their full classes. I'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Roy Choi, and this video is all about leading a team. There's many different styles of leadership, but by definition, a leader is nothing without a team. Leading people, inspiring them, bringing the best out of them, and directing them towards a common goal, it's an art in and of itself. Hopefully, over the course of this video, we'll be able to help you with that. Over the course of my career, I experienced all forms of leadership. I tried to learn as much as I could from the leaders who inspired me and motivated me, and even from the ones that didn't. So after cooking in some of the best restaurants and hotels around the world, as life would have it, I ended up losing my job and found myself back on the streets, desperate. But this time, in a food truck. We grew that business, the culture, and the team, and we went from 1 truck to 5 trucks, 2 restaurants, and hundreds of team members. These days, my businesses include restaurants, food trucks, TV shows, and I'm only able to do all these things because I have great teams around me. We're going to hear from a range of experts, from elite athletes and championship coaches to entrepreneurs, business leaders, and presidents. They'll be sharing their approach to leading people, and hopefully you'll be able to apply their wisdom to the way you think about leading your own team, whether that's a team of 2 or 200. If you're going to lead a team, you want to hold people to a high standard. You want them to be inspired and motivated and believe in the shared mission. And that all starts with you.
A leader leads by example. It's maybe the most important thing a leader does. During World War II, if you are Franklin Roosevelt or you're Winston Churchill, and you set a tone of the importance of the Allied victory in that war and why sacrifice is necessary, if you can set that tone, then create in your team and in the people that are following you that same conduct, that same integrity, that same determination, that same sense of purpose, that same willingness to work hard, that same willingness to be generous of spirit, then you've really created something much larger than yourself. And the kind of conduct that the leader uses in how he treats the members of his team, how he addresses the people that he's working with is really an important thing because it's a contagious tone.
The time that I noticed the effect that I was having on my crew and whether I bring good or positive or bad energy into the garage, I notice it having a ripple effect in terms of our performance, or how engaging or how motivated people were around me. So one thing, for example, what I do today is I try to just walk into the garage, and if I don't physically fist bump everyone, I'm trying to just make sure I acknowledge them, let them know that we're here to win today, because we're all connected, we're all working towards the same goal. You have to be really conscious of your energy, what you're saying, the words you use, the things you say. You have to be motivating, you have to be uplifting and empowering. You want to empower each and every individual to be the best they can be. Because if they're the best they can be and you see their power, they're encouraging the person next to them, and it filters down.
First, think about leading by example. That's how you set a tone for others to follow. But you need to stay humble. You have to know that you can't do everything on your own. You have to rely on the people around you, delegate, and trust them with real responsibility. When you do, that's how you build a great team. Simply put, if you empower people, they'll feel valued and invested in your common goals.
As I've gone along more, I've also tried to really learn how to empower the people under me, to make sure that I'm valuing the people who are working there and delegating in a way that makes sense. And a lot of ways, leadership is about making sure that you're not working in a hero model where everything depends on you, so that everyone's like, oh, Shonda. That's not interesting. And it's not interesting for them, and it shouldn't be interesting for me. Everything should be a team model. Like, everybody is valuable and everybody is necessary. And everybody should have that feeling. If they're not feeling that, then there's something wrong with the way I'm leading.
My particular philosophy of leadership, I actually feel very strongly it's important to empower those that are working with you, your collaborators, your team, that they will work much more effectively if they feel that they can make leadership decisions on their own, that not every single little detail has to be run by other people, that they are able to make creative decisions, that they can do things on their own. I am not micromanaging. I do not believe in micromanaging. I think it's a far more effective way of achieving the best results.
Surround yourself with great people. Give them the freedom to make mistakes as well as to do good things. Inspire them. Do not second guess them. And your business is likely to excel as a result. If you give people a big say in what they're doing, they will flourish, but you will flourish too.
So it's important to empower people for lots of reasons, but it's especially useful when you're making key decisions. If you can draw on the experience of multiple people and incorporate their perspectives, it will take your decision-making to the next level. Diverse teams will help you make better decisions.
I think it's really, really important to have as diverse a group of people in terms of opinion or backgrounds, age, as you possibly can.
We know that diverse groups make better decisions, and the reason we know it is there are mountains of research. It's not like this has been a subject. How do you build teams and how do they perform? It has been studied ad infinitum, and there are literally mountains of research that show that diverse teams make better decisions than homogeneous teams or lone geniuses. If you go tomorrow to a meeting with 100 people, and you could pick the smartest person in the room and take that person to a little suite and give the person anything they might want for 2 or 3 days and feed them like a king or a queen and all of that, and leave the other poor 99 people there drinking cold coffee and eating stale rolls, and give them the same set of problems, over time, the 99 will do better than the 1, even if the 1 is the smartest. Once you're committed to the same goal, then diversity becomes a priceless asset, because it's a way of inventorying the widest variety of experiences, the widest varieties of perceptions, the widest varieties of preferences. And if you're putting all that together in pursuit of the same goal, it's an unstoppable force.
Another critical thing for a leader to be aware of is their own weaknesses. Once you know what you don't have, you can find people on your team to bridge those gaps. Knowing and understanding your weaknesses takes courage, self-awareness, and humility. It's difficult, but it's the mark of a truly great leader.
When you're building a team, one of the most important things is to know where your own weaknesses are as far as a team goes and what strengths you need to complement those weaknesses. What experiences are you lacking and what experiences can you bring in to the team? So, for example, the night that Abraham Lincoln won the election in 1860, he could not sleep. And he came up with the decision that he would put his 3 chief rivals into his cabinet, Seward, Stanton, and Bates, because each one had much more experience than he. All he had were 4 terms in the state legislature and 1 term in Congress. And here he's facing the biggest problem that the country has faced since its founding. So he puts in these experienced people. They were more celebrated. They were much more educated than he. And at first his friends worried that you're going to look like a figurehead with all these powerful people around you. He said, "You're wrong. The country is in peril. These are the strongest and most able people in the country. I need them by my side." So he created a team of rivals. He had enough internal confidence to know that if he had them in his inner circle, he would then be reflecting the different factions in the country, because one of them was conservative, one was moderate, one was radical. And if he could persuade them and listen to them and absorb their opinions, then he would be a leader. And I think that's what you're looking for, is the confidence to not feel threatened by people who will argue with you, question your assumptions, and really debate what's going on rather than simply echoing your views because they're like-minded people.
To get the best advice out of your team, you have to empower them to disagree with you, push you, and to challenge you. Like many true leadership qualities, it requires courage and confidence. But it's so important if you want to be a good leader.
It is critically important to empower people around you to disagree with you. During my very first week as president, I packed my whole team into the Oval Office and said, "Look, most of you are young. You've never worked here before, but I have confidence in you. And I don't want you to be afraid to express your opinion or to disagree. I want you to know that you will never be fired, transferred, iced out, in any way hurt by disagreeing with me or anybody else." I think if you don't want people who will speak their mind around you, who know something you don't know, if you don't want that, then you might as well run your operation with a computer and artificial intelligence, never ask anybody their opinion. I mean, you might as well get out of the leadership business.
Of course, once you've empowered your team and given them the freedom to raise concerns, ask questions, and disagree with you, you have to be prepared to listen to what they say.
One of the biggest attributes that resilient leaders have is the ability to listen. Listen more than you talk.
Your brain already knows what you think, so you don't need to hear it all the time. Whereas if you spend your time actually, listening to people, you're going to be learning and learning and learning all the time.
I have found that the people that I respect the most, 1, they always have time for you. 2, when you do go seek them out, they listen to what it is that you're saying. They are in the moment with you.
If I'm, say, doing a question and answer session with a group of people, they'll ask me a question, and at the end of the answer, I will always try to ask them what they think about their own question. And I think, they appreciate the fact that I should show interest, and the fact that they ask that question, they almost definitely have a reason for asking that question. The very fact that they ask the question, most likely they're itching to actually tell you what they think.
By listening to your team, you hear a wide range of opinions, perspectives, and voices, and that's great. But eventually, someone needs to make a decision. And that's what a leader does. It is their responsibility to make a decision and communicate it clearly to their team members. Often, the decisions you have to make won't be popular, so how you communicate with your team becomes really important.
You have to depend on the team that you put around you, that they are tasked with gathering information to tell you what the potential downside is of a decision, what the potential upside is, and then you have to know when to pull the trigger and make the decision. And that sometimes is the hardest thing for people.
If you have what looks on the surface at least to be a no-win decision, that is, if somebody's going to be mad at you no matter what, then I think the best thing to do is to take it head on right from the beginning and say, I have reached the decision that I believe is best for the company, for the foundation, for the you name it. And I think that it won't make anybody fully happy. And I'm sorry about that. I do want you to know I did hear you. I did try to take into account your interests. I thought about this 9 different ways, and I made this decision. And here is why I made the decision I did. You owe it to them to explain it as best you can. The next best thing to pleasing people when you have to make a decision is making them the respect the process and the rigor and the honesty with which you did what you did.
Hopefully, with the help of your team, you're making good decisions. And with any luck, you're enjoying success as a result. And when you have success, make sure you give credit back to your team. Let them share in your success. You didn't do it on your own, and they need to know that you know that.
Most things are run by teams. I mean, it's very, very, very rare that one individual is responsible for anything.
You are nothing without a good team.
The people that work for you, work with you, really, are the reasons you're successful. They want to know that you appreciate what they're doing.
So, it can be quite grating if suddenly, somebody in charge of a team talks about, I have achieved this or I have achieved that. People who use the I word too much, I think put people off, and rightfully so. If you're in a team of people, it's very important that you talk about us or we and try to avoid the I word unless it's absolutely necessary.
That old saying, catch someone doing something right, instead of always complaining about what they don't do well. So every time something happens that it wouldn't have happened without them, you let them know, hey, couldn't have happened without you, man.
And it means so much to hear that from somebody. The flip side of that is if you're willing to share responsibility with the people around you when something goes wrong, rather than blaming somebody for it happening. This is something that it's so simple to do and so important. If something you're working on as a team goes wrong, instead of just blaming or talking and gossiping about who made the mistake, is to just assume that we're in this together and we're going to figure out how we can make it better the next time. So that person doesn't feel isolated. That person has to learn from what it is, and blaming them will never, ever let them learn.
So give credit for the good stuff and share responsibility for the bad stuff. Of course, as a leader, there are times when you have to demand more of your team, even if it means letting them know that something's not right or could be better. So how do you hold people accountable and drive standards?
How do you balance tough talk and compassion? The idea is to be critical of someone's actions without them thinking you're being critical of them as a person. So you saying to somebody, that's a lousy shot. That doesn't mean you're a lousy shooter. That doesn't mean you're a lousy human being. That doesn't mean anything other than that was a lousy shot. And when they know, well, the reason Coach Auriemma said that is because he wants me to make that shot. And if I keep taking lousy shots, I'm not going to make it. So I have had to already have a relationship with them that they know why I'm saying it. That I'm not being critical, I'm actually being helpful. If you want to be honest and truthful with your people that you work with, one, make sure you know them, they know you, they know it's coming from a good place, and that they know the only reason they would say this to me is because they want me to be better. But I think the number one thing you can do with a player or employee maybe is say to them, I understand. Sometimes that's all you have to say. Listen, I understand what you're going through. I understand why this is hard. I understand what a struggle it is. I can see you're frustrated. I've seen this before. We all go through it. Let's figure out how to fix it. How do we fix it? Now here's how you should fix it. How do we fix it? And then here's how I can help.
One of the interesting aspects of being a leader is the conversations you might have in a difficult time where you know you need to talk to them about something that's going to be difficult. A change in habit, poor performance, or you don't know what it is, but you know that that person isn't right. What I like to do in that case is try to do some scouting. Can I get more information before I talk to that individual? Then I try to find a spot in my office or someplace where that player will not feel pressure, where they would feel comfortable. Hey, come on in the theater over here. Let's sit down. I said, what's going on? Something's going on, man. I told you I'd always be here for you. It's confidential, me and you. And then you try to put that person in a comfortable position and not prejudge, even if your intel has said certain things. There are always at least two sides to something, but sometimes a lot more. And it can get complicated. And before you make a decision, let's try to find all the details.
I've found that leadership is a balancing act. You have to be a parent, a teacher, and a cop all at the same time. But there's one final element you should add into that mix, and that is fun. You want people to enjoy their work, you want them to form friendships, and you want them to create memories that they'll cherish forever. We all spend so much of our life at work, so do everything you can to keep morale high and ensure working with you is a positive experience.
Somebody once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I couldn't agree more. You can have the world's best strategy for growing your business, but if your culture isn't right, it's not going to go where you want it to go. The people are so critical and so important. And here's something, you set the tone for culture.
If I look at the history of building Virgin, I think some of the things that sort of brought the company together the most were not necessarily mission statements, but were more Friday night, let's all go down to the pub for a party. I mean, Richard, if he's the guy who's running the company or the department, he's up on the bar first, dancing on the bar. Letting his hair down, having a good time, which means that everybody else can do the same thing. If there's a swimming pool, the guy who's invited everybody there, he's the first in the pool, fully clothed, so everybody else can, get in, jump in the pool. In those sorts of situations, you can then, be chatting at the bar, talk to people, you get to know the real people.
I always get up and say, this is going to make you better whether you work here or your next job or at home with your family. These are key elements that will improve you. And the entire company at Spanx did stand-up comedy. We rented out a comedy club and every single employee got up on stage and delivered at least a line or two, and everybody could not believe that they did that. They were all so nervous, but afterwards it was a wonderful, encouraging team building opportunity for the whole company.
I remember when we took over a big chunk of British Rail in the UK. It had been run by the government. The staff were demoralized. They certainly hadn't had a party. The very first thing we did was to invite 10,000 of the staff down to my house in the country. We gave them the party of a lifetime, and they became Virgin people overnight almost. I mean, like the difference when you went on a train, the next day was palpably different. And it doesn't take a lot to make people feel wanted and and appreciated. So, try to do things that make people smile, even if you make a fool of yourself.
I hope you found this video helpful. Leadership is ultimately an art, not a science. It's something you never perfect. You're constantly learning and improving. I know I certainly am. If you want to hear more from our instructors, I'd recommend diving deeper into their full classes. Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm Roy Choi, and I'm here to talk about personal growth. Over the course of this video, we're going to cover some of the key things to keep in mind and giving you a deeper understanding of personal growth, about finding your passion, setting goals, the importance of self-discipline and self-care, dealing with pressure, how to learn from failure, never giving up, and why you need confidence. You're going to hear from leaders in a number of different fields, giving their unique insights on how they view the importance of personal growth. They're all incredibly successful, and I want to share their advice and insights with you. They're from different fields and backgrounds, but the one thing they have in common, they all found their passion.
What is that thing that you can do all night for free if somebody lets you? If your bills would still get paid, if you know for sure that your kids were gonna eat, that your house was gonna get paid for, and that you could spend your time any way you wanted, do you have it in your mind? That's your passion. And if you don't know what your passion is, like in this moment, if you are drawing a blank, it is 100% okay. In fact, the way that we have been conditioned to live our lives on autopilot, you've basically been set up to not know what you really love. It takes time to cultivate that, and it takes encouragement. But the goal is for you to become a little bit more driven by what actually makes you feel good and what actually lights you up inside.
I discovered my passion pretty early in life. I come from very humble beginnings. My parents had a restaurant in Anaheim. I think that laid the foundation for my passion for cooking and eating. I was a latchkey kid when I was 4. I think my family moved like 7 times over the next 10 years. That's probably why I was a restless, somewhat transient teenager. And then by my mid-20s, I found myself swirling in the depths of addiction. But then, at my darkest moments, I found my calling, and it changed everything. And that was cooking. The kitchen literally saved my life. I've had a 25-year career doing what I love, and that love of food has been the bedrock for me to launch Kogi and multiple different restaurants. Now, once you've identified your passion, you need to set clear, well-defined goals so you have something to aim at. Bottom line, you can't hit a target if you don't know what it is.
Goals are not New Year's resolutions, and goals are not wishes. They're meant to be concrete. They're meant to be achievable, but at the same time, the bar's got to be set realistically high.
I don't think you should put yourself in a position where success is always guaranteed. If it's easy, then everyone will do it. It's like if you get on a training bike and you've got it in the first gear and you're not getting any resistance. There's no feedback. It's easy. You're not challenging yourself. I think you've got to set goals and targets that you can almost think that, geez, that's not possible. How am I going to get there? And then you go through that process of working towards it. I think the harder the task, the harder the challenge, the stronger you need to be in order to get it. So I would always say set yourself goals that are almost impossible.
What would you like to have accomplished? Individually, first. Write it down.
Every year, I actually try to write down my goals, and I try to focus on short-term and long-term, because if you look at your overall goal package, it can get a little bit stressful and overwhelming. So that's why I split it into the two.
When we're talking 2 months from now, and I go, you wrote this down. You said you wanted to do this. Are you? Not really. What are we going to do about it?
Setting goals matters, but if you want to reach those goals, you need to hold yourself accountable, and that takes self-discipline. The first time I really needed self-discipline in my career was when I made the transition from being an employee into becoming an entrepreneur. When you work for someone else, they give you a schedule, they give you your directives and timelines. But once you leave that behind, you're suddenly in charge of you. But whether you're working for yourself or as a member of a team, you can think of yourself as your own boss, and self-discipline can help you reach your goals.
Discipline is staying on course. If you set yourself that you're going to train 2 times in the week and you want to build that up, you do those two days in the week, and then the next week you do 3 days in the week. It's setting yourself goals and targets.
I absolutely hated discipline whenever I was younger. Discipline goes a long way, especially in the sport of gymnastics, but it means showing up to practice on time, fueling your body, going to bed at a reasonable time. I still make sure on the weekends I don't get too crazy so that on Monday I'm ready and refueled to go for the rest of the week.
It's hard for me to tell you how to be more disciplined. It takes focus, it takes will, it takes concentration. It's really important to set aside distractions that could prevent you from becoming disciplined. It's important to analyze your habits to determine whether or not they create a lack of discipline. But like many things in life, it's something you have to determine to do yourself. It takes work.
Look, I get it. It's easy to get distracted. You have to remind yourself on a regular and frequent basis about your goals. Even write them in big fat markers so you can see them. And most of all, create a routine that gives you the time you need to focus on them.
I happen to believe that in every day you need to have some quiet time to think, where you're not really being bombarded by external forces. In some cases, you're not doing email, you're not watching television, you're not doing anything really but enabling yourself to concentrate on whatever it is you might be anticipating or what you are planning to do. That's vital. It also, I think, is energy producing in a way, because while it might not necessarily be the greatest form of relaxation because you're thinking about work, you're at least thinking about work thinking in a very effective and efficient way. And I find that when I can be alone with my thoughts about work, my thoughts tend to be far more focused and have a lot more clarity.
And now that you're 100% determined to focus, don't lose perspective. And that means don't lose sight of the importance of self-care. Make self-care one of your goals. Self-care can take lots of forms and looks different on everyone. Maybe you're a spiritual person. Maybe you like to meditate or do yoga. Some people find regular exercise helps. It could be as simple as setting aside time to spend with your family or taking your dog for a walk. You have to find a way to keep yourself grounded and unwind from the stress of your work life.
So the reality is, when you're early on in the work of establishing yourself, you're going to be working hard. You're going to be working long hours. You're going to say yes more than you're saying no. You have to make time to take care of yourself. Burnout is real. And I know that you have that hustle mentality, and we've all come from this grind culture that tells us to go, 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 go. But hear me when I say this. It is so important to have work-life balance.
We need to make sure that we take care of ourselves, that we take a break just to process everything that is happening, just the journey that we have had, what we are learning from it. Are there things that we need to take into consideration? Are there things that we should change slightly? And then how do we get back into the mission? What you need to do is give yourself a bit of time to reboost yourself with energy. Along with that, you need to make sure that you eat good food, you drink enough water, and you have a good sleep. But these are the things that I know are important, and I am told many, many times to do it, and I remind myself to do it. It's very easy to forget about it because you're just so busy in your work that you don't look after yourself. But again, I'm reminding myself and I'm reminding you that we have to look after ourselves, make sure that we are good, we are healthy, we are taking enough sleep, we are taking care of ourselves.
As you advance through your career, you'll hopefully be taking on more responsibility. And with that responsibility comes pressure. The stakes get higher and there's more riding on your shoulders. So how do you deal with that?
I truly believe that with the absence of pressure. It's very difficult to accomplish great things. Pressure helps you accomplish those things. There's a process that you have to go through to accomplish something great. The reason it's called great things is because you have to go above and beyond. So what kind of pressure? Time pressure? Peer pressure that somebody's trying to get there before you are? Pressure in how many people are counting on you to make sure you get it done? If somebody says to you, hey, listen, this is what I want you to do. You've got an unlimited amount of time to do it. You've got no obstacles to overcome. And you know what? If you don't accomplish it, it's okay. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Well, then tell me how that's a great thing you just did. Anybody can do that. So pressure, to me, brings out the best in people, and it also brings out the worst in people.
Now here's the catch. No matter how good you are, no matter how you handle pressure, sometimes things are gonna go wrong. You're gonna fail.
Will you make a lot of mistakes? Absolutely. Have I made lots of I have a great relationship with mistakes. Me and mistakes are like this. I learn from them, I grow, and I get better. You don't make all the shots that you take, and some shots just aren't for you to make. So I have a strong belief that what's made for you is yours, and that really drives me. I can dismiss so many things by saying, oh, that wasn't meant for me. And that does make me feel better. Even though it may hurt in the moment, telling myself that just wasn't my opportunity makes the world of a difference. If you feel like you only have one shot, you're playing the game wrong. I think that you should continue to try. I think the worst thing that you can do is give up and say, I have my one shot, I'm done. You must not really want it.
Pain is power, period. In the moment when we're going through it, I mean, it's not palatable. Pain isn't palatable for anyone, I don't think. But when you look at the 1,000 times that you've been cut and you healed, the most likely response to tragedy, trauma, discomfort is self-repair, is resiliency, is tenacity. And when we look at challenges through that lens of potential, knowing that pain will become power, then you start to trust your own ability to navigate that moment. I believe our challenges are our greatest teachers. On the days when I had terrible training runs and there were plenty, I just said, thank you. Thank you for the lessons. I'm not even sure I know the lessons yet, but thank you.
In my opinion, failure is 100% necessary for greatness. To achieve greatness, to have that success, you've got to fail as many times as possible. So don't shy away from it. Every single successful person who's achieved great things, whether it's climbing Mount Everest, whether it's getting to the top of a company, whether it's being the best athlete possible, they've all failed more times than they'll be able to remember. But through those lessons that they've learned through those failures, that's how they've become great.
So here's my pitch. Never, ever, ever let a failure go to waste. Learn from it, own it, embrace it. Fear of failure should never hold you down. It can empower you to try a different approach based on what you learn. And if you can do that, if you can appreciate how it can make you grow, you'll never have to hide from what scares you. You can face it head on. For a long time, I was afraid of opening a restaurant in Las Vegas. I'm a very spiritual person, and Las Vegas is all about the numbers. And because I was afraid to deal with what I call adult economics, I was stuck. But I finally took the leap, opened a restaurant in Las Vegas, and found out that despite my fear, that I could be true to myself and my brand.
People often ask, where does courage come from? How do you get courage? How do you cultivate it? I think it's really important to think of it this way, that we all have fears. Nobody is fearless. People will say to me, Sarah, you're fearless. I want to be like you. I said, I am not fearless at all. I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid to fly. I'm often afraid to public speak. Like, where do you want me to begin? But I'm courageous.
Confidence does not come from perfection. You don't have to be perfect to be confident. I am still nervous in so many places and I don't have like the perfect speech, and I can still be in positions where I don't feel fully ready and I'm like, oh, I'm not wearing the right outfit and the shoes are not really matching my dress. Those moments are always there, but that does not mean that you should doubt yourself for a second. You are courageous, you are brave, and you have so much work to do. Confidence does not require perfection. All it needs is you believing in yourself and you accepting yourself as you are. So don't worry about anything else. No one can remove you from that place.
A great way to give yourself confidence is to give yourself credit. It's easy to forget to do that, but you need a boost from time to time. You need to feel good about what you're doing and what you've achieved so far, even if you've got further to go.
Congratulations for making it this far. Oh my God, I can't believe you made it. You did it. Nobody else did it but you. And you're out here killing it. So I'm proud of you. You see what I'm doing right there? That's a pep talk. That's what I do for me. I love a pep talk to myself. I walk around my house talking to myself, singing to myself, because it's encouraging. You know, if nobody else is gonna do it, best believe I'm gonna do it for me. And it just gets me motivated and energized. I think you should always be your biggest hype man or woman, person, and you should embrace that. If you're not excited about what you're doing, nobody else will be excited about what you're doing. So get excited.
Confidence ultimately comes from within. You need to know yourself and be comfortable and proud of who you are. You should never worry that you're not what other people think you should be.
Sometimes it could be scary to advocate for your ideas when you feel like an outsider. It could be frightening to be the dissenting voice, to have the dissenting opinion. But what I want to remind you of is your power, and that there is power in your difference.
When I was younger, I used to think being different was a weakness. And I just wanted to blend in. I just wanted to be like everyone else. And over time, I realized that that was never going to be the case. And over time, I realized that that was actually a strength.
The people in those rooms need your voice. They need your perspective. They need to better understand your lived experiences so that the work that you create together with your collaborators can resonate more widely with a broader range of people.
My mom always told me, stay weird. Nobody remembers normal. Nobody remembers normalcy. Normalcy is an invisibility cloak, and sometimes that's appropriate. But when you're trying to leverage difference and when you're talking about elements of swagger and you're talking about reinvention, you want to leverage difference. You want to leverage the ways that you are uniquely magical in the world. And I'm grateful that my mom told me that from such a formative age, because I was able to understand difference as beauty.
If you do feel like you're different and that you don't fit in, that's okay. Embrace that and go with it.
Okay, everybody, that's it. Closing time. I hope this has been helpful and giving you a deeper understanding of the keys to personal growth, about finding your passion, setting goals, the importance of self-discipline and self-care, dealing with pressure, how to learn from failure, never giving up, and why you need confidence. As a chef, I know the importance of having the right ingredients, and those are the ingredients you need for your personal growth. If you want to hear more from our instructors, I'd recommend diving deeper into their full classes. See you next time.